Being on the streets, if you're a young woman within 72 hours, you're going to be contacted by some sort of sex trafficker. For me, you know, having that happen within the first 24 hours of being homeless, that really caught me off guard. Like clockwork, almost every morning some guy would come up to me. He's like, who are you running with? How much? Who's your pimp? Hey, do you want to run with me? Like, I'll keep you safe. I hated people in general, so I was immediately like, no, fuck off. Who am I? It's always an interesting question. It's like, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'll let you figure that out for yourself. When you're sleeping in your car, you don't get a lot of sleep because you're always afraid of people knocking on the windows, you're afraid of people trying to break in, you're afraid of the police catching you. I go through at least 100 people asking, hey, can I crash for a couple days? Hey, can I live with you? Hey, can I rent a room? And not really telling anyone you're homeless. Who wants to homeless 17-year-old girl in their apartment? You know, sometimes I would hang out at the Denny's overnight, and during the day, I would sleep or be at work. Yeah, that's kind of how it was being homeless on the streets, especially in LA. During the night, you can just walk on the bus. So I ended up a lot of times just finding like the night buses and just falling asleep on them, getting an hour or two here, and essentially living out of my backpack. I would get away with being not on the streets, kind of just go from one place to one place to one place. The other option was, again, 24-hour diners were really good, and dining and ditching. And there are these little tricks and things that you can do when you are homeless to stay alive. Am I proud of them? No, but you do what it takes to survive. You know, you have guys who will tell you, yeah, stay at my place, but I'm gonna expect something out of you. So is it prostitution? Is it sex trafficking? You decide. Because the only option I had if I needed to stay somewhere, I only had them as an option unless it was on the streets. And so yeah, there was a couple of guys that, you know, alternated to make sure that I could actually have a safe place to stay. Because so long as there was sex, they would feed me, they would clothe me, they would house me.
Resilience is a little bit slippery, right? Because it feels really abstract, it feels intangible. We've historically talked about resilience. We have this perception in our mind of like these gummy bear kids, and we're just throwing adversity and trauma their way, and it's just like bouncing off of them, and they're like totally not impacted, and they just like get up the next day and like take over the world. And like we've had this like really weird sort of obsession with this concept of resilience that is so not based in reality, but is widely perpetuated. And when I think about resilience, I look at it from a different lens. I think it's much more of a developmental process that happens across the lifespan. And someone could be what we consider to be resilient today and not be resilient tomorrow. And we could look at somebody who we might say like they're not very resilient, but they could forge that resilience down the road. And it's just not something that we can so neatly predict like we have thought we can. And one of my biggest struggles has always been our sort of limited knowledge of resilience and then how that impacts the youth that we work with. So we'll look at a young person who is maybe struggling, maybe isn't making the best decisions or the best choices, getting into trouble, and we'll say this young person's not resilient, right? And then we'll look at somebody who is maybe doing well academically, and seems to really be bright and smart and articulate, but maybe is struggling in ways that we don't see, and we're saying that person is resilient. And so we're very quick to label somebody as resilient or not resilient, and then that changes how we engage with them. It changes what we do for them. It changes how we behave around them as providers. And I think we have to instead say, how do we help this person forge resilience, regardless of what we think they are or aren't.
So I was born in the middle of the 90s. Parents were addicted from anything from meth to heroin and cocaine, severe alcoholics, smoking 2 packs a day, and homeless themselves. They obviously couldn't be parents, was taken away and was put into a foster to adopted situation. My adoptive placement was much worse than my biological situation, because by the time I was 9, I could definitely understand, emotional, psychological, physical, and sexual abuse that happened. And, by the time 14 came around, when I finally ran away from home for, not the first time, but the time that put me back into foster care, they checkmarked every box for situations and things that I had been describing at home. So I'm almost 16 and, I'm essentially failing out of high school. I can't just go to school and act like everything's normal. My 18th birthday comes and goes. I have to go through almost every friend. So I go through at least 100 people asking, hey, can I crash for a couple days? Hey, can I live with you? Hey, can I rent a room? And none of them are open to it, because who wants to homeless 17-year-old girl in their apartment?
So when I was 18, I had a scholarship, and I had a car that I basically just walked onto a lot and purchased with a 22% interest rate. I had mentors, and I had a part-time job, and so I had all of these things sort of going for me. But one of the things that started to happen is, my scholarship was dependent on my grades. And then this paid internship I was doing was dependent upon my full-time enrollment, which was dependent, so it's like, and then my housing was dependent upon whether or not I was doing this internship that was paid. And so it's like, if one thing fell out of line, if I got one bad grade and something was threatened, everything else was gonna fall. So it just was this enormous pressure cooker to succeed, and there was no place to fail, because if you failed, it meant you lost everything. And I don't think that people who sit down and say, we want to see transition age youth succeed, so let's just pile on all these productivity requirements, because there's this idea in their head that they're lazy, that they're entitled, that they're not going to work hard, that they're going to stay at home all day and eat Cheetos and watch TV. And so we have to make sure that they're doing X, Y, and Z to show that they're being productive and deserved of whatever we're giving them, whether it's, a monthly stipend or a payment or a scholarship. But I don't think they understand how inflexible that can be and how incredibly hard that can be on a young person's mental health when they're trying to figure out who they are in the world, when they're leaving a childhood that was marked by traumatic experiences and events. And that ultimately, by adding all these requirements and doing all these things, we're making it worse. We're not making it better. We're not giving opportunities. We're creating penalties. And so how do we sort of change our thinking and be more flexible and create space where young people can fail and will still be there without any conditions?
I've always had a dream of being an RN. I finally got a call from the hospital, and I began working night shift at the hospital and the school Monday through Friday. I was hurting so much inside here, but if I worked, I was always so tired and working, I don't have to feel the pain, if that makes sense. So I just distracted myself with work. I was working my butt off, and I was trying to go to school. I was trying to make good choices, and it was barricade after barricade, and I had a lot of issues. Number one issue, trust. I thought everybody was out to get me. I thought everybody was against me. It was hard to build relationships because I had no trust. I felt really embarrassed living in my car. I felt ashamed, thought I was a failure. Again, my survival mode kicked in again. I'm like, okay, it's okay. I have my blankets. I can sleep in the car today, and we'll see what tomorrow looks like. So I was literally living day to day. I also had to stop going to school too, because I just couldn't afford it. Either I live and eat, or I go to school and buy books. Things that helped me heal. The first one was family, like my siblings. I feel like those attachments that I had with them was all I had. That's all I had as far as trust and love. Because we all experience really, really tough things together. And we only had each other to lean on. So they saved me from ever messing up. anytime I would want to do something bad, like I would think I can't do that to them. I doubted myself, I didn't love myself, but like God knew what I was going through, and He loved me, and He accepted me for me, and He never judged me. He never, rejected me. He always knew, hey, like you're living in your car, like it's okay, I accept you, I love you. Looking back now, I just, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm actually really like proud of myself. Like I never chose drugs. I never chose alcohol. I never chose a bad relationship. Things happen with parents, and the biggest, most important thing is like it's not your fault.